Peace. So today, for a little bit, I wanted to just build on today's mathematics. And then also add on about our degrees, 120 lessons. So today's mathematics is wisdom. Wisdom is symbolic to the number 2. Peace, God. Peace, justice. Yeah, so wisdom is symbolic to the number 2, right? In our supreme mathematics. Wisdom is right discernment. Discernment is judgment. So when we're talking about wisdom, we're talking about right judgment. Wisdom is symbolic to the number 2 because that is the second principle in supreme mathematics. The first principle is knowledge. And knowledge always precedes wisdom because you can't make wise decisions if you don't know shit first. That's why knowledge is the foundation, because the more aware you are, the more conscious you are, the more information that you accumulate, it gives you more of the potential to make wiser decisions. So wisdom represents the number 2. And wisdom is not only symbolic to the Black woman, but it's also symbolic to water. Well, why? Because when you look at wisdom being right discernment, that is a universal solvent. The nature of wisdom is to solve problems. The same way water is a universal solvent and it's also a higher conductor of electricity, wisdom is the highest conductor of knowledge. So just like I've mentioned in the past about wisdom being symbolic to water, if there was a boulder in the path of water, right? Wisdom or right discernment's nature is to meet challenges and obstacles. So the same way if a boulder was within the path of water, water may simply just go right around that obstacle and meet that challenge that way. Water can also soak in the ground and go beneath that obstacle or go beneath that boulder and resurface on the other side. Water can also evaporate, transcend the boulder, and then distill on the other side. Water can freeze and move the boulder out of its path, but then water also has the patience that over time it can actually penetrate that boulder. That is the same way that wisdom functions. Wisdom is rightly discerning what is the most appropriate way to deal with challenges, obstacles, and adversity. But in order to be wise or to rightly discern anything, it hinges upon having a proper foundation or the proper knowledge. So if a person doesn't know anything, they cannot make wise decisions. And that's one of the beautiful things about supreme mathematics. It's not hinging upon a person's belief. Everything that I'm sharing right now, I don't care if a person believes that or not. All the person has to do is go out and put their own theories to the test. Meaning, if you don't think you need knowledge before wisdom, go out here and strive to make decisions that are wise and see that you're going to be forced to go back to the foundation. Meaning, the less knowledge that a person has, the less likely they are to make wise decisions. Which means once they get out there and they're making decisions and doing this, that, and the third, they're going to make errors. They're going to face obstacles and challenges that they're not going to be able to overcome. They're going to make foolish mistakes. And in the process, they're going to be forced to think, oh, now I know. Now I know. Meaning you have to go back to the foundation, because you should have gained as much knowledge to begin with so that you had the potential to make wiser decisions. That's just a natural life process. So supreme mathematics is identifying natural life processes, ascribing principles to them, and being able to align ourselves with what we naturally see. So today being the second, we arose as 5%ers, and that day, the number 2 resonates with us in a certain way where now we're actually thinking about wisdom. And one of the things that I mentioned in the past is people are orientated in different ways. Some people have religion. Some people are not religious at all. You know, some people are metaphysical. Some people are spiritual, whatever a person's perspective is. Whatever that perspective does is it orientates them to not only think a certain way, but that thought process is reinforced by the language that they speak. So our language consists of words that have more of a significant meaning to us as the true and living gods in the earth, or as the original people or first world people, than people that practice these various different religions. So for example, some people have not even thought about the word wisdom until I just mentioned it. And the last time that they might have heard that word was maybe last year sometime, because it's not a part of their lexicon. It's not a part of their language. It's not something that they talk about or they aspire to or that they align themselves with each and every day. But because that is a part of our language, that's something that we consistently talk about, that we consistently assess, and we consistently strive to align ourselves with. So today being the second, I woke up this morning thinking about wisdom. And that became a part of the principle that I use to navigate the landscape of life that I walked throughout the course of my steps today. So now, wisdom being right discernment, if you take it and relate it to our wisdom degree in the 1 to 14s, which I asked the question, why did Musa have a hard time civilizing the devil in the year 2000 BC? The answer says, because he was a savage. A savage means a person who has lost the knowledge of himself and is living a beast life. Musa was a half original man, a prophet. 2000 BC means before Christ. In the Asiatic world, it was in the year 11,000. Civilized means to teach knowledge and wisdom to all the human families of the planet Earth. So now what does wisdom have to do with that lesson, right? Well, like I just mentioned, the less knowledge that a person has, the less aware a person is, the less conscious that a person is, then they're less likely to make wise decisions in their life. So this lesson is talking about the hard time Musa was having in dealing with adversity, because that's what devil essentially is. It doesn't necessarily have to be an individual or entity outside of yourself. It could be something that you are dealing with internally that represents adversity. So why did Musa have a hard time civilizing the devil? Like I mentioned in the lesson, at the bottom of the lesson, it says civilized means to teach knowledge and wisdom to all the human families of the planet Earth. Knowledge and wisdom. That's 12. 12th letter in our alphabet is L. That's love. Why did Musa have a hard time teaching love? Right? So the first part of that lesson tells you because he's a savage. A savage means a person who has lost the knowledge of himself and is living a beast life. So now, when you're thinking about teaching love, wisdom being right discernment, an important component of love is knowledge, having a proper foundation. It's difficult to teach that to a person who has lost that knowledge. That's one reason why Musa had such a hard time. That is one of the reasons why we have difficult times with striving to bring civilization or order or some type of structure to certain things in our life that we may be struggling with, because we may not have the knowledge or the proper foundation to stand on in order to address these certain things. So just like in the lesson, it says, because he was a savage. A savage means a person who has lost the knowledge of himself and is living a beast life. It's difficult, or it's hard, even from an external perspective, to strive to deal with civilization with people who ain't got no damn knowledge. That shit is hard. Because again, if you don't have knowledge, if you are not striving to gain knowledge, the possibility to make wiser decisions in life is minimal. You're minimizing it. You're going to consistently make foolish ass mistakes. You're going to consistently find errors, and you're going to consistently find yourself not being able to meet challenges and obstacles because you're not increasing your knowledge or striving to be more aware of how can you rightly discern how to deal with this? How? And if you're a person that's striving to build with a person that's like that, or strive to offer them some sense of civilization or love, that shit is going to be hard because they don't have a key component. They don't have knowledge. So how do you expect them to make wise decisions if they don't have knowledge? That's why the lesson says he was a savage living a beast life. A beast life is a person that's living on a horizontal plane. They're living on they're basically living on all fours. And if you say the wrong thing, they're going to jump on you with all 4 feet too. So living on that horizontal plane, they're not upright. They're not perpendicular. So when you look at something that's perpendicular, that's a right angle. It's a right angle. That's the exact same tool that's used in the building trades in order to try stones to see if they are a right angle, to see if they're appropriate to build with. All of this is symbolic. All of it correlates, right? So if a person's living on a horizontal plane, they're not upright. They're not a right angle. Then you share stuff with them, they're going to take it, and it's not going to be the right angle that they're using it. They're going to be mixing, diluting, and tampering and adding other different shit that you didn't even tell them to do and everything else, and then come back to you and tell you why it wasn't working. That's what people do, because they're living on a horizontal plane. They're not looking at things from an upright perspective. So if they come to you and ask you for some advice about some shit, and you tell them specifically, do A, B, and C, and you're going to get this result. By the time they come back to you, they didn't add an F, G, W, and everything else to that shit, and then come back to you and lay it in your lap and say, it didn't work. I don't know what happened. That's a hard time. That's a hard time. And that's one of the things that you find in that degree dealing with wisdom, right? Not only from a historical or a chronological perspective, dealing with Musa striving to civilize the devil, but dealing with our own things that we have challenges with, and then dealing with people on the outside that's hard-headed, that's living on a horizontal plane, that's not committed to knowledge, and constantly have to sit there and watch them make unwise ass decisions. So thinking about today's mathematics, going through our lessons and seeing a relationship in those lessons to the mathematics, it orientates us psychologically. So this is the kind of things that are on my mind. If I build with somebody that also has these lessons and has the mathematics, then they're going to share other different perspectives with me. But that is the way that we orientate ourselves. On a psychological grid, we're thinking in a whole different capacity than other people. Somebody else may be just having a whole conversation about Tiffany Haddish getting dragged and shit because she bombed at a New Year's Eve concert in Miami. That is the extent of their conversation. That's where their mind is at. That's how they're orientated. Or they may have got up this morning and listening to other different music that doesn't have no substance to it. And like I said, the last time they might have thought about the word wisdom, because it's not a part of their vocabulary, was maybe a year ago, months ago, whatever. And that's the only thing that they recall about its application in their life. So when you think about it, every domain in life, every career path, every industry that a person's involved in has its own nomenclature, has its own language to describe not only the landscape, but the objects that are native to that landscape when it comes to that domain, that career path, that industry. So if you're a carpenter and you're working in a carpentry shop, there's certain language that comes along with being in that career path or within that domain or that industry. If you're not a part of that, a person that's a carpenter and they're speaking amongst each other about different tools and methods to use and other different things, it may sound to you like they speaking pig Latin or something. You know what I mean? Same thing with a person that's into music or a person that is an artist or whatever that industry is. There's certain language that is native to that domain, to that industry, to that career path. Now, in terms of knowledge itself, your language has to be constructed in such a way where regardless of the industry, the domain, the career path that you find yourself in, you're still psychologically orientated based upon that language. So when you're in these various different domains, career paths, or industries, you use your language as a way of translating that worldview into that domain. You still may know the language in the shop if you're a carpenter or if you're an artist, but whatever that language is, you are never moving out of the central point of your worldview or your perspective. But you're using your language to teach as well as learn from people who are native to that domain, that career path, and that industry. Where's the wisdom in that? Well, let's relate it to the wisdom degree in the 1 to 36. The first degree says, my name is W.F. Muhammad. The second one says, I came to North America by myself. Now, what does wisdom have to do with coming to North America by yourself? Well, one of the things that we learn from gaining knowledge of self is North America is oftentimes described as a wilderness where the wild things are, right? And any environment like that, which can be equivalent to some Book of Eli type shit, right? Or some zombie apocalypse type thing, you know, your head has to be on a swivel. You have to be able to navigate a landscape where you don't know where things may be coming from, which means you have to have a sense of perspective that you're able to see things within your peripheral. So now wisdom, being right discernment, means that you have the capacity to be aware of the various different things within any landscape that you're in, but at the same time, rightly discerning what is the most appropriate thing to do in that environment or in that scenario or situation. Again, wisdom, being symbolic to water, is a universal solvent. It's the highest conductor of electricity. It's the highest conductor of knowledge. So knowledge is a sensuality, but wisdom is an activation, it's the manifestation of what that knowledge is. So the more aware that you become of something, the more you study landscapes, study the various different objects that are native to landscapes, and being able to determine what is not native to a certain landscape. It allows you to have your head on a swivel. It allows you to be able to navigate a landscape that would be considered wild. So when it says, I came to North America by myself, it's also saying that you have to rely upon yourself. Not that it's all about being an individual, but you have to rely upon yourself to be the one who makes the appropriate decisions in any situation. Meaning, you can't rely on nobody else's wisdom. Yeah, we have proverbs and we oftentimes consider different things that people say. You know, you have to rely on your own wisdom now in any given situation, meaning you're by yourself. You were born alone, and you're going to leave this planet alone. So the decisions that you make, you're not going to be able to rely upon somebody else's wisdom in order for you to navigate this landscape in the proper way and to meet different obstacles or challenges. So you learn all of this from just studying the mathematics and seeing the relationship of the mathematics to our degrees. Now, think about this. Wisdom is the number 2. If you break down the number 2, you get knowledge. You get 1 and 1, right? You take it to the 11th letter in our alphabet, that is K, which stands for king or kingdom. A king is one who governs with authority. But since that's related to wisdom, in order to govern with any kind of authority, you got to have wisdom. All you got to do is take a cursory glance at any kind of kingdom or society of the past and see the degree of that person's ability to govern with authority was equivalent to their wisdom when it came to making certain decisions on how that kingdom should be governed. It's parallel, right? So you take it to the 11th letter, which is king or kingdom, and then you can take that 11th letter to the 11th degree in our 1 to 14. So the 11th lesson asks the question, have you not heard that your word shall be born regardless to whom or what? The answer says, yes, my word is born is life, and I give my life for my word shall fail. So that is another quality or attribute that you learn about a person who has the ability to govern with authority, that they're a person of their word. They follow through. And to the extent of this person keeping their word and being honorable, it's equivalent to their ability to govern or master or to have control over that kingdom. Just take a cursory glance at any kind of kingdom and study it throughout history and assess their honor in terms of them keeping their word, and their word is being born, and that bond being life, as well as their wisdom, where they're making wise decisions. And you're going to see the different outcomes of what happened in that kingdom based upon that. It's all mathematics. This has nothing to do with belief. It has nothing to do with convincing nobody or nothing. Do your own research, and you'll see the evidence of everything that I'm building about. You know? So now, take it to the 11th degree. So basically what I'm doing right now is I'm talking about wisdom being the number 2. I'm elaborating on why wisdom is symbolic to the number 2. And then I started to show you the relationship of that to the second lesson in one body of lessons that we have. And then I broke it down to 11 and showed you the correlations with that, you know, and that's the way that the mathematics, yeah, no doubt, God. And that's the way that the mathematics and the alphabet, as well as our degrees, function. You know, so sometimes you have people who come amongst the 5%, right? And they strive to act like they're us. But if you don't have the curriculum, if you don't have it in its entirety, then it's going to limit your ability to make those correlations. So for example, if a person just has mathematics, that's all they're going to be able to do. Just talk about the number 2. And it's I don't even know how much perspective they would have just talking about the number 2. But if they don't have the lessons, they won't be able to tell you why Musa had a hard time civilizing the devil in the year 2000 BC, or why I came to North America by myself, or have you not heard your word shall be born regardless whom or what, or taking it to the alphabet, the letter K. You know, they won't be able to draw up and make those type of correlations, which means their perspective is not going to be as wide or expansive as it should be when it comes to living this culture. And that is one of the reasons why it's important not to just study the mathematics, but you need to have the alphabet too, and you need to have your lessons or your degrees, because the lessons or the degrees actually puts into practice what you're learning about these principles and qualities, because that's what the mathematics and the alphabets are. They are principles and qualities or characteristics. Now you learn about how they function within the context of a lesson. And that's what I just showed you about the wisdom degree in the 1 to 14s. Why did Musa have a hard time civilizing the devil in the year 2000 BC? I showed you the principle of wisdom in context of that life lesson. If they don't function that way, what's the purpose of even having the math, the alphabet, as well as the degrees or our lessons? There's no reason, you know? So in terms of our growth and development and learning about this culture, it's not a religion. It's not a belief system. It's not hinging upon what a person believes or whether they're convinced or not. Just put it into practice. So one of the ways that we describe ourselves as the 5% are scientists of life. You know, scientists of life. So when you think of scientists or science, science comes from the Latin root sire, which means to know. So a scientist is a person who is dedicated to knowing, who's committed to being aware and conscious. In order to be wise, you have to be that first. You can't be all wise if you're not a scientist of life first. And that's all you need to do. Just if you're engaging a person and listening to them and just watching how they live, if there's wisdom in their way, then you're going to identify a science of life that they're living. There's going to be some sense of knowing or something that is scientific about the way in which they live. It has to be there, because in order to have wisdom, you must have knowledge first. Wisdom is the manifestation of knowledge. Wisdom is the application. It is the manifestation of the foundation of knowledge. And like I said, if a person is not committed to that first and foremost, primarily, then if they close to you, then you need to minimize the amount of time that you're investing in them and everything else, because anvils and everything else going to start dropping out the sky. You remember that Tom and Jerry cartoon with the dog and the cat. And the dog, the cat met a black cat, and the black cat gave that cat a whistle. And every time the cat got into trouble and the dog was up there trying to bully him or something like that, he'd blow the whistle, and then the black cat would walk across his path and should have just started dropping out of the sky on the dog's head. That's how it is. That's how the life of an 85 is, or a person that's not committed to knowledge. It's only a matter of time where they constantly gonna get caught up in certain shit because they're not dedicated to knowing. They're not dedicated to knowing. Now, here's the thing. Just living life naturally. You're gonna make errors. You're gonna face obstacles and be unable to meet some challenges, just naturally. Knowledge is supposed to help you minimize that so that you can make wiser decisions, so you can minimize foolish ass mistakes that you're making. So if you were 20 years old and it took you 4 moves or 4 steps to accomplish a certain task, by the time you're 30, minimally, you should be able to accomplish the same thing in 3 moves. By the time you're 40, you should be able to do the same task in 2 moves. That is evidence of growth and development. That's evidence of wisdom. Because you've increased your knowledge. You've become much more conscious or aware of what are the better ways to deal with these type of obstacles or these challenges. But if you started off making 4 moves to solve a problem when you was in your 20s and you in your 40s now, and you taking 5 moves, you're going backwards. You're not evolving, you're devolving. You're going backwards. But if you want to increase your wisdom, you have to be dedicated to knowledge. You have to be dedicated to knowledge. You have to be a scientist of life. And that's what we got, we're scientists of life. So because we're a culture, we're not religious. Meaning, if somebody invites me to go to church on Sunday and I have time, I go. I'm not going to walk in that building and melt and shit like that, like I'm the Wicked Witch of the West. You know, or if somebody wants me to study this or read that, oh no, I ain't gonna do that. I study everything because I'm looking at it through the lens of the 5%. That's not changing my orientation. I still am who I am, regardless to whom or what. And if there's certain things that I don't do, that's because I choose to not do it. And if it's certain things that I do choose to do, then I'm the one that bears the responsibility for those choices. So as a culture, we don't have a hierarchy. There's nobody above me telling me what to do and micromanaging my decisions. Hell nah. And there's no one beneath me that I'm micromanaging and telling them about their decisions. No. We are solely responsible for our life's choices. We're not blaming no person sitting up on a cloud. And we're not blaming nobody that's underneath the ground with a pitchfork. No. And that doesn't mean that we don't hold people accountable for the bullshit that they do. Yeah, you hold people accountable. But at the end of the day, you also hold yourself accountable for how you respond to the bullshit. That's what you do. So at no point is anybody responsible, or do they have the power over you to determine your life path. You don't give people that power. You not like, damn, what could I have done better? Or, you know, how could I best respond to a situation like this in the future? That's the appropriate response. Not you made me do this and you made me do that, or the devil made me do it, or God is you know, have a hand in my affairs. No. You do that. So listen, our 19th letter in our alphabet is S, and that stands for self or savior. Why is that important? Because when knowledge is made born, like I'm born in knowledge right now, it all comes down to self being the savior. I know you've heard the phrase before, you could bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You could bring a man or a woman to knowledge, but you can't make them think. It's the exact same thing. You make knowledge born, or when knowledge is born to you, it's up to you to do something about it. You have to save yourself. You have to take the initiative to do something. You have to. So now look at this. 1 and 9 comes up to 10. The 10th letter in the alphabet is J. That's justice. Justice is just, I see equality, balance, harmony. It's fairness, it's homeostasis, it's reciprocity, it's all of that. But in order for just I, or for you to see that equality, you have to strive to maintain balance. You have to maintain balance. And one way of doing that is taking responsibility for the choices that you make in your life. Never being on the opposite side of that spectrum or that polarity, blaming somebody else, or even striving to take complete credit for everything else. You got to be in the middle. You got to be balanced. So when you're making knowledge born, or when knowledge is made born to you, you got to find out, what can I do to best respond to this situation and not be extreme with the shit. Because when you are, that is where the justice comes in. Just, I see equality. That's the 10th letter, like I just said. So 10, knowledge is a cipher. The knowledge is you. You're standing in the center of the cipher, and you need to be circumspect and consider all of the different possibilities and perspectives when it comes to appropriately addressing a situation or a scenario. Because justice bears on whatever decision that is made. That's why it's best to take responsibility. Because if you don't take responsibility and you leave it in somebody else's hands, they may not be as just. The way that they want to deal with that situation may be totally different than you. It may not be as fair as the way that you choose to deal with that situation. Think about going into a courtroom and you have a judge, you're sitting before a judge that doesn't think like this, that they're not just. They don't look at justice as just, I see equality, fairness, homeostasis, reciprocity, balance. They're not looking at that. They're prejudiced. You want to be judged before somebody like that? Because that justice is not going to be a reward. It's going to be a penalty. Maybe based upon your gender, maybe based upon your ethnicity, maybe based upon your religion or your name, whatever, your social status. That person may be judging you according to all of those different things, right? So if you don't want to be judged in that way, then it's best for you, us, to judge situations and scenarios, to weigh it in a way that we would want to be weighed, regardless of what that motherfucker does. And that is what's challenging oftentimes for some people. Sometimes, and I have to check myself sometimes, where people may do some bullshit and you may want to come back and do some more bullshit to them. And it's challenging sometimes to take a higher role. But at the same time, when you're a civilized person, when you're dealing with righteousness, going all the way back to what I said originally about why Musa had a hard time civilizing the devil the year 2000 BC, because that person is a savage. A lot of times people are doing certain things because they lack the knowledge themselves and they're living a beast life. And instead of you living on a horizontal plane or living a beast life, you have to do what is perpendicular. You got to use the right angle. Regardless of the angles that they're dealing with, you got to use the right angle, because that is your charge. That is our charge as civilized people and as righteous people. We don't have the luxury of being on some bullshit. We don't. We know too much. And as a person who is dedicated to knowing, as a scientist of life, you have access to more wisdom. You're expected to make wiser decisions. And that is one of the reasons why we consider all wise, right, and exact. And we strive to do everything right and exact. That's our charge. Not because somebody's over you telling you that's your charge, or you're over somebody else telling them that that's their charge. Nah. It's what they oftentimes say in the church about a self-accusing spirit. You have a conscience. So knowledge also increases your conscience, not just your consciousness, but your conscience. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I just wanted to build briefly about the mathematics. That's the beauty of it. I'm up here all the time. I'm building with my preschoolers. I'm in my after school program. I'm dealing with anybody else, but this is the mind. This is where I'm at. This is my language. This is my language. And those of you who are my brothers and my sisters, that's their language too. And whenever I have an opportunity to speak my language fluently with my family, you know, that's important. And for those of you who have not been connected to your family, connect with your family. Because if you're not speaking this language with them, what are you speaking? And who are you speaking it to? You know, another important part of this is this language or this wisdom. When you share it with one another, it reinforces your worldview or your perspective in life. And it gives you various different perspectives when it comes to being circumspect or seeing other different angles of that cipher. Going back to you being in knowledge. That is what allows you to maintain a sense of balance in life. Because sometimes, you know, having your own perspective on things, you may not see I don't see well, I'm looking at this camera so I can see what's behind me right now. But typically, I don't know what's behind me until I look. It's great to have someone in front of me who's able to see with crystal clarity what's behind me. And then we can both collectively see things within our peripheral. So when we build one another, that's no different than presenting our evidence or our research to our scientific community. That's what we do it for. We don't build to sit and have a pissing contest or to challenge one another. I mean, if a person's bullshitting and you're striving to vet them and to see if they're right and exact, or, you know, you may take them through those various different ciphers or whatever. For the most part, if you're building with your brothers and sisters, yo, you're presenting your research to the scientific community. You're saying, yo, this is what I've drawn up. This is what I've concluded from my life experience. And how you see that. You share it. Some person may look at that research and say, yo, to add on to that, and they may add other things onto your research, or they may also encourage you, yo, I think you should take that away right there and maybe replace it with this. So you take that back to your laboratory. You say, okay, peace, I appreciate that. Take it back to your laboratory. You do some more experiments in life by living and applying it. And then you update whatever it is that you've been building on. And the next person you come in contact with, that's what you do. That is our process in terms of reconstructing ourselves back into what we have chronologically been as first world people, as the fathers and the mothers of civilization. This ain't no just confidence building bullshit, or so somebody can go around and constantly just tell you who they are. No, this is a way of life. It's a way of living. And it's challenging because for the most part, growing up in this society, people are not encouraged to be scientists of life. People are not encouraged to study. After I get off of this live, I'm going to go study. And it doesn't mean that I'm about to go get some reading glasses and shit and I'm sitting in a hard back chair like, oh my God, like, nah, I'm not compulsive about it. I'm always studying something. All of us is always studying something. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the way we live. As scientists of life, we're dedicated to knowing. And if you're coming in contact with somebody and they saying they're 5% and all this other shit, and they're not dedicated to knowing, they're not a 5%. If you can't come in contact with me every single day, and me not being able to share something with you new that I've learned that day, I ain't living this culture. Because this way of life is a constant process of growth and development. We're always striving for perfection, always. So it doesn't plateau anywhere. There's not one day where it's like, yo, I know enough. I'm as wise as I need to be. I understand everything. Nah, that's not our posture, our position. We're constantly learning. We're constantly living. Why? So that we can be better and more of a resource to other people. That is why. So it's not just a personal thing, but it's a collective thing. We wouldn't have this way of life or this culture if it wasn't for the sacrifices of those that came before us. We wouldn't. We wouldn't. And them paving the way. Some people lost their lives in the process of being scientists of life. So we don't take that shit for granted. So some people, when they look at 5%, they be like, y'all real strict, or y'all don't be bullshit. Yeah. Yes. This is not no lackadaisical, casual shit that we deal with. No. You have to know your lessons. You have to know your degrees. You have to know your math. You got to know your alphabet, because your family and your community relies on you. They rely on you. So in order to live this type of way of life, you have to be responsible like that. You have to care about the condition of your people, and then the condition of the human family as a whole. And you're doing your best. All of the stuff that I do, this ain't just for me. This is so that when people reach out to me at 3 a.m. and shit, I could respond to them. Or if somebody comes up to me and they're asking me about this, that, and the third, I can respond to them. So you become a resource, a resource. So this ain't a way of life where you can just be as knowledgeable as you can and speak in $50 words and shit and be styling and profiling what you know. Nah, you're becoming a person that changes the paradigm or changes the complexion of the community. A person who is responsible for making sure that this world is a better place than when you first arrived here. It might have been great when you first got here. Make it better now. Not just relying on the legacy of those that came before you and being nostalgic and shit. You know what I'm saying? Can't live off another person's wisdom. Live off your own wisdom, your self-style wisdom. And make sure that you are continuing the legacy of those that came before you. That's our charge for being here. You know what I'm saying? That's our responsibility. True indeed. True indeed, powerful. Nothing in nature exists for itself. We live in an interdependent universe. Everything relies on something else, you know? Some people have a very twisted perspective of why they're here. Selfish as fuck, you know? They think it's all about them, whatever they can get, right? Well, hold your breath then. Go ahead and hold your breath. See how long you can do that before you have to give it up. You know, it's pretty simple. But yeah. So my brother, my god brother right here, Justice Hakim, he would be like the Abbott's Abbott in my family tree. So to kind of break it down, he taught the brother that taught the brother that taught the brother that taught the brother that taught me. So that's what he is in my family tree, you know? And that's important to have those relationships with your family, because things that I'm just learning right now, I could build with the God about it, and he'll summarize it in 3 words or something because of his life experience. So I'm helping continue the legacy that he has laid down, that he's still continuing right now, you know? True indeed. It's the way that you manifest your knowledge. True. Now think about this. Wisdom is the right way, because when you look at synonyms, you know, associated words, there are a lot of associated words to wisdom. Like I said, wisdom is right discernment. Wisdom is a form of being clever, right? But there are various different words that relate to being clever. You have cunning, you have sophistication, you have guile, you have shrewd, you have all of these various different words that are associated with being clever. But if they're the same thing, there wouldn't be the necessity to have different words. Each of them are different gradations or different perspectives of cleverness. So for example, wisdom as being clever is much different than cunning as being clever. Wisdom is right discernment. Clever does not, by definition, have to be right. So it's a whole different way that a person is being clever when it comes to being cunning. That is different than a person being wise. So it's important to be able to understand those various dimensions that are synonyms or associations with wisdom, because you can run the risk of judging something as being wise when that shit is beguiling. When that's just sophistication. It's worldly. It has nothing to do with being rightly discerning, but it's just sophistication. That's what that form of cleverness is. It ain't wisdom, though. You know, same thing with beguiling and cunningness. Those are very different forms of being clever, but they're not wisdom. They're not wisdom. So in terms of what you were saying about, you know, wisdom is the way that you manifest your knowledge, a person has to be clear on that being wisdom, manifesting knowledge. Because a person can have knowledge, but be manifesting sophistication, though. And you see people like that all the time. You see it within the 85%. They may be very sophisticated at what they do. You know, may have food, clothing, and shelter, may have some wealth that they built and everything else, but then you start seeing a lot of these glitches in their way of life, which is like, yo, but you still worship a mystery God, though. You still think that the devil's on a hot sauce bottle. You still doing this. You're so clever. Like Ghostface said, these smart, dumb niggas. You know, people may be so clever, but then they always do some 85 shit. We like, oh, okay, yeah. So they have knowledge, but that is not knowledge manifesting wisdom. That's knowledge manifesting sophistication. Or that may be knowledge manifesting cunning. You know, a lot of cats in the street, they're cunning as fuck. Or they're beguiling, because that is something that is a part of that world. Anything that's beguiling functions under cover of darkness. And a person that has to function in the streets, they got to do shit in darkness. That's the way that you move. That ain't wisdom. That shit is beguiling. That's guile. That's along the lines of trick knowledge. Cunning like a fox. Foxes are nocturnal. You may have foxes living in your neighborhood right now, but you never see them. If you have the luxury of crossing their path, that in traditional indigenous societies is oftentimes seen as a good omen. Because the fact that you can cross paths with a fox, do you know how wise you would have to be in order to meet this creature that is nocturnal along their life cycle or along their routine or their path? The greatest adversary or predator to foxes and some of these other creatures, especially these animals that are nocturnal, are mankind. They do everything in their power to avoid you. But if you're able to cross paths with them in their routine, in a lot of indigenous societies, that was a symbol of a good omen. That says a lot about you. You know, back when my queens was young, shit, we used to go and stalk foxes. I'll get them up at like the culture hour in the morning, and we'd go to like a local area where I knew foxes were, so that we could strive to stalk foxes. I used to do that shit with my queens when they was young. You know what I mean? So when you're looking at a creature like that, you know, clever like a fox, that operates under the cover of darkness, that's nocturnal. When you see people doing certain stuff, they function in the street, they doing other different things, that's not knowledge manifesting wisdom. That's knowledge manifesting cunning. That's knowledge manifesting fox. Or we say about women, oh, she's a fox. I'm just trying to tell y'all. You know what I mean? The difference between wisdom and supreme wisdom is manifesting to better self and others. The supreme form, otherwise wisdom, is time duration study of a given subject. True indeed, God. True indeed. You know? So yeah, you have so it's important to know the difference. Just because somebody got certain words, that don't mean that's wise words. That shit may be some sophisticated words, some beguiling words, some cunning words. That's not wisdom. What distinguishes wisdom from those other different dimensions of being clever is wisdom is right discernment. There has to be a component of right in it, which is an aspect of right just or righteousness. Just means true. So there has to be truth. There has to be a sense of ethics involved in it or morality. And there has to be a sense of righteousness to it, a sense of jurisprudence, a sense of justice. If you don't see all of that in the knowledge that a person's manifesting, that shit ain't wisdom. It's beguiling, it's sophistication, it's being cunning. That's what it is. And it's important to be clear about that. It's important to be clear about that. Because you got some people and they be talking about, wisdom is wise words being spoken. What kind of words you talking about though? Everybody got words. I'm talking about wise words being spoken. Okay, rightly discerned words. Your words have a sense of righteousness in it. Those kind of words, because it just ain't sitting here talking and shit, trying to do gymnastics on motherfuckers to sound good. No. The basis of it is using what you know to do the right thing, to say the right thing. And we all struggle with that each and every day. Sometimes, the other day, I could have used my words better. You know what I mean? And I know that. I did good for the rest of the day. But in some scenarios, I was like, I could have weighed my words a lot better than what I did, That's a constant process of growth and development, So wisdom being right discernment, wisdom being water, wisdom also being the woman, it's also reflective. Just like you can see your reflection in water, an important aspect of wisdom is self-reflection. So even though we gain knowledge, we strive to increase our awareness, which gives us more of a potential to make wiser decisions. There's still going to be scenarios where we might miss something. We make an error. We miscalculate. But an important part of wisdom is using that experience to reflect upon what it is that we know, to update our information, to take it back to the lab, make some adjustments. And then when we face a similar scenario or we come in contact with people who are in similar scenarios, we're able to add knowledge on to decipher. True indeed, God. Striving for perfection. So this culture, this way of life is not about a plateau. It's not about a horizontal plane. Because like I said in the wisdom degree, in the 1 of 14s, why did Moose have a hard time civilizing the devil in the year 2000 BC? Because he's a savage. Savage means a person who's lost knowledge of himself and is living a beast life. So that beast life is a horizontal plane. So living this culture is not about a horizontal plane. It's not about a comfortable niche where we think that we know everything, we wise beyond our years, or that we understand everything. We're constantly striving to know. We're constantly striving to make wiser decisions, and we're constantly striving to understand things that we didn't have to understand until yesterday. So it's a constant growth and development process. We're striving for perfection, like the God was saying, constantly. Because if we ever look at it as a plateau, that is the domain or the place where you become more susceptible to living a beast way of life. That is the plane. Because you're comfortable. There's certain things that I do where I deliberately create an edge in my life because I don't like comfort. I mean, my home, one of the things that I've been doing all winter is I don't turn my heat on. I deliberately have made my environment uncomfortable so that I could adjust to the uncomfortableness to keep an edge, because the cold current keeps me with an edge. You know, those of us that's from the north that live in these cold climates, that cold current gives you an edge. You ain't laid back and feeling luxurious and shit and chilling and all of this other stuff and comfortable in the cold. Shit, you making moves. So I've been deliberately striving to create my environment like that to see if I can build my resilience. So I'm always doing certain things like that. I always strive to push myself in ways where my growth and development is something that I'm constantly able to measure. I'm constantly able to quantify that. Yeah. You know, and as a 5%, one of our customs in terms of building with one another, it serves the exact same purpose. So at any time I could come in contact with one of my brothers and sisters and they may ask me, yo, God, how you see today's mathematics? You know, how you see this degree? So I have to be constantly prepared for that. You know, that's not no plateau where I'm just comfortable and, you know, I'm not expecting nobody to ask me shit. I'm obligated to respond. And that is how we keep each other sharp. Some people are not comfortable with that. And I can understand it. But to me, this has been one of the ways that I've been able to stay sharp and to remain encouraged and supported when it comes to my growth and development. Because at any time, somebody may want to ask me something or to tap me as a resource. I got to be prepared for that. So I'm not constantly doing the things that I'm doing or researching things or studying this or striving to develop this particular skill set just for myself. Because at any time, somebody may tap me as a resource and say, yo, God, do you know about this or do you know about that? Or could you put me in contact with this person or that person? I have to be prepared for that. Because this culture, this journey is about being an asset, not only to your family, but also to your community members. This is our approach towards restoring ourselves as first world or the fathers and mothers of civilization, first world people. That's our approach, one person at a time. I'm developing myself. If I'm formally teaching somebody, I'm helping them in their growth and development. These things that I do, you know, sometimes I come on here and just build live, or I do some videos, or do my animation, write articles, do videos, whatever that I do. If I'm here in my city or if I'm in another city, that's all for the express purpose of inspiring, empowering, and educating others so that they could be equipped to do the exact same thing for other people. That, as the 5%, is our approach towards growth and development. We don't need a hierarchy. We don't need no leader telling us that we need to do it. We don't need ritual or ceremony, and we don't need all of that. All we need is the commitment to the growth and development and a clear-cut, practical process to that growth and development and the ability to share it with other people. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. And there is no intercessor or no facilitator that forever remains an obstacle in that process. So even though I'm an enlightener and an enlightener taught me, that wasn't a permanent position in relationship to me. So a person that's teaching us the culture, that's a temporary position. We're following only to the extent of learning to lead ourselves. So right now, one of the guys I'm teaching, he's in his 1 to 14s. He has a way to go before he knowledges 120. Once he knowledges 120, that day, where now he is responsible for living out the totality of the culture and also fully equipped to teach others these lessons, I'm not greater than him. We're on the same plane. I may have had knowledge for 20 something years and he just had it for 5 minutes. That don't mean that I'm greater than him. We're all the same. We're all one and the same. And that is our approach. We want each other to have equal access to whatever it is that we have. You don't see that in the hierarchy. You don't see that in religions. That's why this is not a religion, it's a culture. In religions, you have that hierarchy, and you got people at the top rationing off bits and pieces of information and keeping people in certain positions beneath them, even if that person is more qualified than the person at the top. That's how they maintain that order and that structure. And that is also why they have that linear growth and development. That growth and development is hinging upon whatever the person at the top wants to give the followers. They're only going to grow as big as the fishbowl that they keep them in. We don't do shit like that. If a person's studying with me, you're going to get what you put effort and energy into getting. I'm not rationing this shit off and trying to keep people apart from my own social equality and doing all this other shit. People in religion do that. And also with that religion, they have built-in prejudices and discrimination, because if you're not down with that, you either going to hell, you ain't going to be taken up by the rapture, this, that, and the third, all this other stuff. We don't do all of that shit. If a person don't want to gain knowledge of self, hey, that's on you. All right. What you want me to do? Convince you otherwise that you need it? No. I already know what the value of it is. If you don't know, hey, that's cool. Sooner or later, what I'm saying is going to make sense. And even if you don't get it from me, you may get it from one of my brothers and sisters. That's also making as much sense as I am. But yeah, I just wanted to get on here for a minute and just build, about today's mathematics and just add on with y'all. But let me get off here and do something else. Y'all have a good night. Peace.